Joining us this morning is Americans for Tax Reform President Grover Norquist. And Grover, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks so much for weighing in this morning. Do you think tax reform is going to be as easy as the president says?
Well, he's quite correct. It's going to be a lot easier than health care. I mean, there was a lot of special interest money in Obamacare that bought off all the various interest groups. I mean, this was a plan that was written by the interest groups for the benefit of the interest groups in Washington, D.C., and $1 trillion was thrown at it. So you can imagine the opposition that those Republicans that are trying to get Obamacare repealed have run into. On tax reform, it's one-dimensional. Taxes up or down. Healthcare's regulations, taxes, spending, it's three-dimensional.
Yeah, but that's not exactly true. I mean, Grover, when you look at this idea that some people would like to see this revenue neutral, they want to see revenue somewhere. As you lower taxes, they want to see revenue somewhere else, like a border adjustment tax. Or maybe there's a debate on the corporate rate. Is it going to be the president's 15%, or is it going to be Paul Ryan's 25%? And then there are all those deductions. So there are going to be a fair amount of fights in terms of what deduction stays, what deduction goes.
Yes, but they're about, are we going this direction or that direction further? And that's an easier debate to have. You're quite right. Look, they're very important things to decide. I think the president is quite correct that a 15% rate is where they should start, both on corporate income and Subchapter S pass-through income, on all business income, 15%. That makes us competitive with the rest of the world. It makes special interest deductions less interesting or important to anybody. You don't fight for them if it's only a 15% rate instead of 35%, the present 35% rate. Taking the corporate rate down to 15% also takes the corporate capital gains tax down to 15%. That's going to be a tremendous, there's so much growth to be unleashed that there's some real opportunities on health care. As we move forward, we do have to decide, is this going to be revenue neutral over 10 years or at the end of 10 years, or a deficit neutral at the end of 10 years, 25 years? There are a number of ways to make the tax cut longer lasting, more permanent, and deeper that are within the power of the House, Senate, and the White House.
Grover, let's talk about personal rates. You know, with respect to, something that was circulating a couple weeks ago, Steve Bannon talking about maybe raising the high-end rate with respect to bringing down some of the middle-class tax rates. Is that still out there? And does that complicate this simplicity of saying, okay, we're going to cut taxes across the board, but then there's going to be rates that may be moving up or down within that proposal?
No. First of all, the president has said nobody's rates are going up. Almost all the Republicans in the House and Senate have signed the Taxpayer Protection Pledge, which is a commitment to the American people that they will never raise marginal tax rates. So it wasn't an interesting idea. It wasn't a good idea. It's not something that they're looking at going forward. I don't know why it popped up the way it did, but we're going to reduce rates, and this is a consensus issue among the House, Senate, and the White House. All rates are coming down. No rates are going up. And the only debate is how far we can get rates down for individuals as well as for companies and pass-throughs.
Well, Grover, the way that the Senate health care bill stands as it is now, these Republicans are standing by Obamacare tax increases on investments. The investment income tax, 3.8%, and this is on wealthier Americans, stays. 9 percentage point tax, payroll tax, stays. How do these Republicans look at themselves in the mirror and say, I'm for these tax increases?
It's pretty bizarre. What we have is almost all of the Obamacare taxes get repealed. It's a wonderful list of all these stupid tax increases that are being repealed under everybody's plan. But it appears they're going to leave those two taxes that you talked about, the 3.8% capital gains tax and a special surcharge tax, in for right now. Tax reform is when those two bad ideas can and should be taken out. Everyone I've talked to said, yes, we want to get rid of them. Some of them felt they didn't want to do it in the middle of tax reform, because that makes it too complicated in their mind. But there is a tax cut, tax reform bill. You cannot reform taxes and leave that 3.8, which is a direct attack on a lot of smaller businesses and pass-through Subchapter S companies. Very damaging, anti-growth tax increase.
Mr. Norquist,
it's got to go.
Yeah. Mr. Norquist, respectfully, it's Heather Herzog. I still don't understand where this revenue is coming from. So you're going to reduce personal taxes. You're going to reduce the corporate tax rate. Where is the revenue going to come from?
Well, that's where the debate. Do you need something? Do you want something to be revenue neutral? Or how long a period do you have the window before it has to be deficit neutral? The law says after the window, you can set the window up at 5 years, 10 years, 25 years. We've been doing 10 years recently, but it's been 5 and 7 before. There's nothing sacrosanct about 10 years. You could do 25 years. You could do 2,500 years under the law. So the goal is to get deep, pro-growth tax cuts for as long as you can, as permanently as you can, as quickly as you can. And we need growth going into the 2018 election and the 2020 election.
Right.
And we need growth because there are millions of Americans who, during the Obama years, never got jobs when the recession formally ended. It didn't end for them.
So what do you make of the CBO then? I mean, the Congressional Budget Office is casting doubt over the president's budget proposal this morning. The CBO said yesterday that the federal deficit would total $720 billion in 2027 under the plan, compared to White House estimates of a $16 billion surplus. This difference is that the Trump administration is projecting healthier economic growth than the CBO is. So you're saying we need growth. Yeah, the White House is estimating 2.8% growth under the president's policies compared to the CBO's 1.9% growth. Yeah. That's what the difference is in terms of the CBO score. But if the CBO is saying it's not balancing the budget, Grover, is this going to be an issue?
Look, Congress can direct joint tax, which is the key decision maker for how tax reform takes place, how to make these decisions. It doesn't have to defer to joint tax. But one of the things we're going to have to do when this is over, we're not going to do it in the middle of this debate, is rethink CBO's models and joint taxes models. Those models need to be transparent, and they need to explain why they were so wrong about Obamacare, why they were so wrong about each of the tax and spending issues in the past. CBO has a very bad track record in their estimates about what's going to happen. And until they can apologize to the American people by being off by a factor of 2 on how many people were going to get Obamacare and on how much it was going to cost and so on, why would you organize your reforms around what you know are faulty estimates? And they haven't even corrected the mistakes they made in the past, never mind apologize to the Congress and the Senate and the American people for having been so dramatically off and for politicizing their decisions to make Obamacare look better when they either knew better than that and were lying, or they're not any good at their job. And they've really got to, I mean, there should be congressional hearings on the failures of CBO and to question joint tax on their model so that the next time we do this, we have better models. I would like competing models. I don't mind if CBO wants to do it, but we should have private models out there that can compete. And then when you look and say CBO got it wrong, but these other people got it right, then we don't need CBO if they're going to get wrong like that.
It certainly has been really up for criticism. Grover, great to see you. Thanks so much.